Welcome to another episode of the .NET Show. On this episode, we're going to talk about .NET Alerts. Now, .NET Alerts is an infrastructure that allows you to take and send messages to your customers. Now, and by customers, I mean either customers from a retail standpoint, like you're a retail-based website, or employees at a business to keep them informed of what's going on. But before we get to that, let's check in with Erica and the news.
Hello, I'm Erica Wiechers. Welcome to the MSDN News Update. On June 9th, at the National Show, the National Cable and Telecommunications Association's annual convention, Microsoft unveiled Microsoft TV Foundation Edition, a new digital TV software platform designed to help cable operators get more value from on-demand and other digital TV services using the hardware and network infrastructure they have in place today. Microsoft TV Foundation is a complete end-to-end solution that enables network operators to better package and promote services such as video on demand. The Microsoft TV Foundation platform scales from today's thin client set-top boxes to future generation devices, providing a consistent consumer experience for cable operators to promote services as their digital TV offering evolves. On June 10th, Microsoft announced the U.S. winners of the Imagine Cup competition, which seeks to provide students around the world with resources to use technology and web services to solve everyday problems. The U.S. winners advanced to the World Championships, which will be held June 30th through July 1st at Microsoft TechEd Europe 2003 in Barcelona, Spain. The 2003 winners from the United States are Tu Nguyen from the University of Nebraska at Omaha and Robert A. Wodarczyk from Stony Brook University in New York. Also on June 10th, Microsoft announced it has signed a definitive agreement to acquire the intellectual property and technology assets of GCAD Software, a provider of antivirus technology based in Bucharest, Romania. Microsoft's acquisition of GCAD's technology will help secure customers by providing antivirus solutions for Microsoft products and services. In addition to developing new solutions, Microsoft will use the GCAD engineering expertise and technology to enhance the Windows platform and extend support for third-party antivirus vendors so they can provide customers with increasingly secure and comprehensive levels of virus protection. In June, MSDN Online added 3 more developer centers to its ever-growing collection of product and technology-specific sites. The new sites for Security, J#, and ASP.NET offer developers one place to find the information they need to be successful for a particular topic. Check out the MSDN homepage for links to the new developer centers. Be sure to check out the show transcript for links to more information on these news items. And this has been the MSDN News Update. I'm Erica Wiechers.
Welcome back. Like I said, today we're going to talk about Passport and .NET Alerts. Specifically, I'm wanting to focus on .NET Alerts, but in order to do that, we also need to spend a little bit of time thinking about Passport as well. Here joining me, I have William Lay and Joseph Carmichael, both from the MSN Alerts side of the house. And I understand you guys have been working for a while on implementing .NET Alerts and understanding the issues and needs people might have in using it.
That's correct. We've been working on the MSN Alerts and .NET Alerts for the last 1.5 years, and we have made a lot of inroads into the Alerts platform, both for development tools and in terms of the reach of the product.
I think we learned quite a bit over the last 1.5 years, what customers want to do with alerts, how they try to reach out to their customers, and what kind of messaging they want to provide them over time. So there's quite a bit has happened, and we're kind of pushing forward now.
Now, just to clear up for the audience, when we're talking about .NET Alerts, we're basically talking about those little square pop-ups that come up because you're running either Windows Messenger or MSN Messenger, and you're signed in through Passport in that product in order to allow alerts to come to you, whether they're from, let's say, your stockbroker, when a buddy signs online, or you get a new piece of email on your Hotmail or MSN account or something like that. And this is still maintaining this connection to Messenger and Passport with .NET Alerts?
That's right. Messenger is definitely one of our primary display method that the user would receive the alerts. But alerts also deliver the message to the user if the user is on a mobile phone, or via email if that's where the user prefers to receive them.
So I guess one of the benefits that .NET Alert is providing from a service infrastructure style is knowing the profile or the expectations of the user in order to how to get to them properly. So if they're online, you're running Messenger, it knows I can send them an alert. If I'm not online, I can send them through a pop-up or through an email message. Or if he's not online and he hasn't set it up properly, it sends it through to his mobile phone.
It's all user definable, right? Through the Messenger cloud itself, they can adjust. They can set settings on whether they, the user via their Messenger itself. If they're busy, they can have emails created, or if they are away, they can have it go to their cell phone, or if they're not online at all, they could just have it go to their email as well.
Now, what sort of customers do you see as being the people that something like .NET Alert is specifically targeted for?
I think users who want to receive information that are in a personalized information that they want to receive to customize their use of throughout the day. I think one example of that is the traffic alerts that you can receive through .NET Alerts. If you send a traffic alert of an accident on a commuting route to the user in the desktop beyond the workday, it really has gone into the bucket. It's not relevant when you come back in the morning the next day. But .NET Alerts allow you to route that alert to the mobile phone while the user is perhaps stuck in traffic, and then the user can now pick an alternate route to go home and save a lot of time. So I think that's a value that .NET Alerts has that regular email type of notifications won't be able to provide.
And we're basically just talking about messaging here. Now, the traditional messaging people use today is email. I mean, a lot of companies take and send out, sometimes far too much email filling in my inbox, I know. And then the other is like SMS messages, which how you do it for the mobile phones. And all those are ways of basically communicating with users. Now, today I can take and send email to an email list. Or I can take and send SMS messages from my phone using, the keypad and stuff like that if I know the phone number of people like that. How do you think .NET Alerts, and I suppose specifically how Messenger surfaces alerts on the desktop, how do you feel that's slightly different than email or standard SMS messages?
Right. I think one problem on the net today is that your email is filled quite a bit with spam. And so I think a user, when they log into inbox every day in the morning or throughout the day, one of the first things that I know I do is go to the inbox and find out all the spam that I did not want to receive and delete them. And I think when you use that mechanism to send information to the user, there's a chance that the user will throw out the good with the bad. So I think from an email point of view, it's a channel that users have built up a certain level of resistance to, and they're not actually noticing the message that you want to present to the user as much. With a messenger toast, it's a very unintrusive way to display a message from the partner to the user. It pops up in the corner of the screen even when you're working on your document. It goes away silently in 10 minutes. You don't have to work within 10 seconds. You don't have to delete them explicitly. You don't have to manage them. It's a way to kind of alert, for lack of a better word, the user and give them a very nice user experience and yet get your message across.
Now, today, most of the times I'm seeing people using the messenger alerts as in, I guess, commercial style capabilities. Okay, there is, like, CarPoint, I guess, has the traffic alerts it does, but other people are sending me alerts if I signed up for them, more on a commercial type of aspect. Are there other capabilities using .NET Alerts outside of a standard, commercial business to consumer sort of model?
Yeah, there is. There's a number of companies that adopted alerts as a mechanism for them to send a message out to the employee. So one scenario might be that the business is closed due to a snowstorm, and you want a way to reach the user, whether they're at the computers or on the cell phones at home. You can use alerts to reach your own employees, so it's not strictly a B2C to customer point of communication. It could be used for any level of communications to end users.
So it's enterprise level communications.
Yes, it can certainly be used that way.
So I mean, like, let's say a company like Boeing then could take and use .NET Alerts internally to take and let their employees know what's going on. Let's say, for example, a server goes down. They'd use .NET Alerts to take and send an alert to whoever the technicians or where the technician team was for dealing with that server or something like that.
Yeah, we certainly receive a lot of interest for applications such as those.
So let's say I'm a company like a Boeing or a Ford Motor Company or something like that, and I'm wanting to take and get started doing alerts. What are some of the things I need to think about just in the framework of my business and my own internal architecture of implementing that properly?
Well, one of the key things that you need to establish is a way for the partner and Microsoft to commonly identify the user in a common way. And the way we do that today is using Passport. So any user that wants to receive alerts is identified by what's called the Passport ID. So as part of doing alerts, it's important for you to adopt Passport, and at least in the sections that are relevant to the alerting mechanism, to the alerting application. Beyond that, there's two things specifically that you need to worry about for implementing alerts. One is managing the user subscription. So that's the point of knowing which user is interested in which type of content. In a news application, you want to know this particular user is interested in international news, and another user might be only interested in local news. So you got to remember the user's preference. Beyond managing subscription, you need to actually format the alert, put the right content into a packet that is delivered to Microsoft, who in turn sends it to the user in the best way possible. So both those three things are the three major steps that you need to do to implement.
I want to highlight something there real quick, and that's when you sit down and a company sits down and tries to think about the alert, they really need to think about what is it they're going to be messaging to the customer. Who is going to be receiving the alert, and why should that person be interested in receiving that alert? So it becomes very critical as one of the first phases or steps of the process of implementing alerts is trying to figure out what messaging is appropriate. Because as William says, you don't want to be spamming the user with information that they don't want or find irrelevant, because all they're going to do then at that point is unsubscribe. So alerts has this capability of allowing you to subscribe or unsubscribe, and it's very easy for a user to just turn off the service, and if they turn it off, then you've lost the value that you're going to try to deliver to the user to begin with. So as a starting point, trying to figure out what categories, as William says, do they want international news, national news, or local news? You have to kind of break the messaging down into very probably discrete elements that become important to a group of users that'll want to sign up for those. And then from there, it's a matter of probably using the tools that are available to us, such as the Passport PAG and the Alerts PAG, which are available on the download.microsoft.com site. And we also have several samples written in C# and VB.net that sites or customers can download and start the process of understanding what is required to implement these services.
And just to pick on a point here, you mentioned PAG, and that stands for Prescriptive Architectural Guidance.
Right.
And that's a set of tools and utilities that we have in informational packets, helping people understand how to implement various technologies. And two of the ones they've done is Passport and .NET Alerts.
Right, absolutely. The part of the prescriptive architecture guidance is to develop a sample scenario, a simple scenario, and then define exactly what tools are required, what services are required, and what products are required to fill out or round out that solution, and actually walk you through beginning to end and actually have a successful, in this case, if we were talking about the alerts PAG, being able to successfully deliver the alert to the end user.
Now, you also mentioned that the user can actually turn off the alerts, and I guess that's one thing different that the .NET Alerts has over top of standard email, in that we've now got the MSN Alerts site, which is managing that subscription model, so that I as a user go to that site and tell it what to do. And then let's say you, for example, were the business trying to send me an alert, you're actually sending it through the MSN Alerts service, and so it then looks up in my profile that it knows about and it finds out whether or not I actually want to get something from you or not.
Absolutely.
And so I think from a spam style, I mean, it's much harder to do spam from the standpoint that you can't send me email directly or send me alert directly. You're actually having to go through a middleman that's maintaining that subscription model, which I guess some businesses might not care for too much, because it kind of maybe breaks down some of the communication lines if they're constantly spamming someone. But I think for the user, it empowers them a little bit better, because they're actually able to control the amount of messages they get in the type.
I think it's a real good two-way street. It forces the business to be real crisp about the message they're trying to deliver. And it makes them think through, why am I really giving this message to the end user to begin with? What do I want them to do? So you think of an alert as something that you're going to make a statement of some sort. It's got to be short. And you're going to want the user to take some action with that. And that action is to drive them back probably to your website to do something. You know, if I was getting a stock alert and I wanted to know if the stock of XYZ company was up 10% or down 10%, well, that action might be to take me back to the site to sell or buy more shares, depending on what the activity, why I've signed up for that alert to begin with.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like Alerts has a lot of potential capabilities, both from a commercial standpoint and dealing with, a flower company or a record company, or inside of an internal business sort of model. Now, we've mentioned a couple times the use of Passport. Now, in order to get alerts, you have to have Passport enabled on the site or within the enterprise someplace?
Within the enterprise in some method, the Passport, as William said earlier, provides the PUID. There's a unique ID that Passport generates that allows us to identify a user or locate a user, if you will, either through Messenger or also it provides us with an email address so that if the user wants to sign up for email services, we can direct it there. And then we also use the PUID to help sync up with the cell phone technology, so that if they want a message, SMS message or something like that, we're able to complete the delivery mechanism. So from point of origination at the customer site or at the partner site, we would then, the partner sends the message out to the Alerts Cloud, is what we call it. The Alerts Cloud does some validation work. And at that point, they have to figure out, well, what endpoints does this user want to receive the alert, and how do they want to do that? And so one of the really neat things I think about Alerts is that they handle all that for you. The partner site just needs to make one packet of data, and they send that off to the Alerts Cloud. And then based on my preferences, if I'm the user who wants to receive this alert, the Alerts Cloud will then prepare a message to that specific endpoint for me. And so I, as a partner, I'm relieved of having to do any of that activity, which can be cumbersome, especially if you're talking about cell phone or gateways that require often significant technical capabilities to connect with.
Mm-hmm.
I think the two key points that Joe brought up are very important to emphasize. The user feels comfortable signing up for alerts because they know that they're in control. They know that this is not a channel that you can take my address and sell it to third parties and send me even more stuff. So they're comfortable with signing up these alerts because it's safe. And I think the fact that the alerts are tailored to their usage of devices throughout the day is important, because then your message is being sent in the most appropriate way to the user, and the partner's message comes through clean and clear and in the places where the user expects them.
Mm-hmm. Now, one aspect is that since alerts are being surfaced from the Messenger client, which uses Passport to sign in with, requiring the user to have a Passport account is almost a given, because if they're going to be getting alerts to that toast. Toast is not a term we've used yet. I guess that's kind of an internal term we use for describing what those little pop-ups work like. They're already using Passport as their mechanism for signing on the client. And so the only onerous thing we're putting on top of that is the fact that the business, the enterprise, or the company that's doing it also has to make sure that their website supports Passport in some fashion to connect up to that. Now, having talked to a lot of companies and implementing Passport, one of the issues they raise sometimes is they kind of say, well, gee, I've already got a system for managing user sign-in and stuff like that. And so trying to create a second level or switching over to Passport can often be kind of a problem. What sort of recommendations do you have if someone already had an existing user sign-in model for their website?
There's a number of approaches for that. And in the alerts, actually the Passport prescriptive architecture guide, we do address that very scenario. The one thing to think about is if you're a bank or an institution that's very security conscious and has a lot of requirements that you're concerned about, then you may want to use Passport as a secondary authentication mechanism just for the sign-up of alerts. And the reason why you need that is for that PUID, because if I'm signing in with Messenger, I need to know how to connect the two pieces together. I need to know how to connect the website's desire to send me a message with the fact of where I signed in with Messenger. So I need some unique way to bring those two pieces together, and that's Passport. So you can implement Passport in a very limited way in that scenario where in just the sign-up process, I need a way as a site to collect the PUID so I can store it in my database and use that as part of my sending of the message to the Alerts Cloud, the delivery process. Or I can do a side-by-side authentication system where I can maintain my existing authentication mechanism and also offer Passport for those users that just want to sign in with Passport.
That's the way eBay is currently doing it.
Absolutely. eBay, and there are other companies out there that do that as well.
So essentially, for the lightest possible touch, if you've got an existing user authentication scenario, is have maybe one time that you require the user, once you've authenticated them yourself, to let them say, and sign in once with their Passport, just so we can capture that information and we can get you into the alert cycle then.
Right, and what we did in the PAG is we showed that the user, it could be a sub-menu item where I could just, click on the alerts menu item and go into a process where I sign up for alerts, and in that process I'm asked to sign into Passport. Once I've signed into Passport, I get back the PUID, and then part of the subscription process of recording what alerts I'm interested in receiving, I can record that PUID in my database, and that way at the point in time where an event happens and the partner needs to send me an alert, the PUID's there, and so then they can package up the message and send it off to the alerts cloud.
So now it sounds like some of the benefits we're then getting out of the .NET Alerts service is that even though today I can take and send email to people, I can take and programmatically send out SMS messages to people, and there's a couple other different ways that I can take and do these sorts of things. Today I can't service an alert unless I would actually write a client application that I then deployed on someone's systems. So .NET Alerts provides both the client infrastructure in the form of Messenger, as well as the deterministic rules to find out how to send alerts in the right way, whether it's email or SMS message or through a pop-up alert through Messenger and stuff like that.
That's right.
Now, moving forward, where do you see alerts evolving over time? I mean, right now, just handling that level of functionality I think is fairly important and very useful, but obviously there's going to be some future evolutions going on in the development.
Right. So there are two key areas of evolution for alerts that are happening, that will continue to happen. One is our continued effort to make the platform more easy to develop against. So we want to flesh out even more tools and more SDK components that allows a partner to implement alerts in an easy way. And that will continue with an SDK that we have upcoming in the fall, and of course going forward as well. The other area that we want to continue to improve is the ability to get your message across to the user in an even better way than the tools that we have today. So we are improving the tools. We want to enhance the ability for the partner to format the text in a particular way, to give them more logo opportunities and graphics opportunity. We're working with mobile carriers to increase connectivity to the SMS world. We're giving partners additional capability to tailor the message so that if you want to send a message to a cell phone, you can have it say different things than you would if you send them a piece of email. In email, obviously, you want to be more verbose with more information. In a cell phone SMS message, you want it to be very concise and very full of the information that the user can act on.
So it's like right now you got you're providing one message, and that one message is going to all the different platforms it can go to.
And it's one of the biggest requests we get from customers, because that one message today is very limiting. It's very small, very concise message. In some ways it's really good because it makes the partners really think about what they need to say. But at the same time, partners do want to offer the ability to say a little more about something. So the ability to specify, if the endpoint is email, then I can say this much. If this endpoint is an SMS message, then I can only say this much. And if it's the pop-up or the toast, as we've called it, it's a very short message.
One example that help illustrate the benefit of such a different content for different endpoint scenario is, let's say, going back to the traffic scenario. You want to send an alert to the user's desktop that perhaps has an actionable link to bring them to a page with a map showing where the accident occurs. But at the same time, if the user is receiving them on an SMS-enabled phone, they certainly cannot click on that link and be able to see the map on the phones. So in that case, you want to send them...
On my Pocket PC phone I can, though.
That's true. But on a more typical phone, where you have just text display capability, you want to give them the exact location in a text format to say accident on I-90, exit 36, and then the user can act on that information in a self-contained way.
Mm-hmm. Plus, I guess also the fact that with the pop-up, you've got a clickable thing you can do, where an SMS phone, you don't have that. In email, you can embed a URL from that standpoint. What about the capability of having the action not be web-related? Is there any capability of having it actually execute an application? So let's say I've installed a smart client application onto your system, and part of one of the services my company is providing is the ability to send you a message about something, and I actually want you to just launch that application. Is that something they can do already?
That's something that we'll continue to investigate, and we might offer something along that line in the future. I think we want to, right now we're focusing on the largest share of our users, which is web users or SMS phone users. So as the device become more mature, I think a technology that we're looking into is MMS, a multimedia version of SMS. So you can embed graphics or animations or ringtones and audio into that message. So how do we deliver then a new form of alerts to that kind of capable phones? So we'll continue to investigate how to make the endpoints more, the presentation of it even more rich.
Let's say I want to actually get started working on doing some alerts. What are some of the things I need to understand in order to actually install the capability into my enterprise or into my business?
Right. So I think there's two concepts that's important to understand when you approach alerts. There's the idea of a subscription, and a subscription, to take the example of a news alert, there's two parts to the subscription. One part of the subscription is about what kind of news you would like to be alerted about. That's what we call the content aspect of the subscription. And for the alerts application, that content-specific information reside on the partner side. So the partner, being a news organization, knows how to categorize news into different topics that the user can understand. There's also, corresponding to that, a routing part of that subscription. This is the user's express preference of wanting to receive news only on their desktop but never on their cell phone, for example. Together, those two pieces forms the subscription, and they're linked together using the Passport ID that we've talked about earlier.
And the first part, the business is maintaining on their servers, and the second part is what MSN Alerts service is supplying in their backend databases.
That's exactly right. And so that's subscription. The other concept that you need to be familiar with is the concept of notifications. In general, notifications, we use that term interchangeably with alerts in a more technical level, I guess. Notifications are triggered by certain events. So news feed from Reuters, for example, might trigger certain users who want to receive world news to receive their alerts. So that feed, we call them events. The events are turned into notifications by the partner. So because they know the list of 100 people that want to receive world news alerts, they need to figure out that these are the users that need to be alerted, and they create a notification packet for each one of these users. Once those packets are generated, they are sent to Microsoft Alerts, MSN Alerts, and we then look up the corresponding routing information for each one of these users and deliver it the best way possible for each user. And so with subscription and with notification, those two concepts forms the basis of what you need to implement from the partner side.
What about from a download standpoint? What components do I need to install in my infrastructure?
Yeah, it can be a little tricky because sometimes I think people find it difficult to find out, how do I get started and where do I begin? The first place you really want to go is probably to the downloads.microsoft.com site, and they should be out on MSDN shortly as well. And download the PAGs, take a look through them, and get oriented to what it is that you're going to do. Figure out how the service can fit into your organization and help benefit your customers. The next thing that you're going to want to do is actually try to build a prototype site, and the PAGs are there to help you do that, as well as the sample sites. We have AdventureWorks sample sites that I mentioned earlier that are written in C# and VB.NET, which are also out on downloads.microsoft.com. But all of those require what we call site IDs, and the site IDs, you actually have to sign up for those at a site that's not very intuitive, and it's at www.netservicesmanager.com. And at that site, you create what's called an application. And in that application, you define that you want a Passport site ID as well as an alerts application. And part of the authentication process and the security process requires you to set certain URLs up in the site ID or the application itself, so that the process of signing in and signing on and getting out to the alerts website and bringing in co-branding and all these things that help make the user experience pleasant and nice are part of the experience, overall experience. Once you've done that, then it's a simple matter of also downloading the SDKs, which are out on the download sites as well as installing these applications on your local machine. And that's pretty much what you need to do. You get the SDKs installed, you can download the PAGs and or the sample sites, you have fully functioning applications right on the get-go.
Mm-hmm. And then the only extra step would be making sure that your users all have either Windows Messenger, MS Messenger installed, and they're using it for keeping track of the alerts as they're coming in.
Absolutely. One thing that we should probably note right up front here is that the environments are very independent of one another. So we have a test environment which is exactly identical to the live environment in functionality. And what that means is it can be very confusing, because in the test environment you do have to make some changes to, like, for example, Windows XP. There's a URL that needs to be changed in the registry. The same thing goes with Messenger. Some Messenger clients can be, especially the newer ones, won't work in the test environment. So you need to be cognizant of that issue itself. And then when you try to push your site into live environment, there's a URL change there as well. The help files on netservicesmanager.com is a good place to get started there. And then obviously PSS and other support channels such as ASP.net site has a community communities out there for self-help.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the main reason we're doing the test and the live is just so that when you're testing out your alerts, you're not flooding the live version of the alert service. Since the alerts are live on the internet, constantly going around from machine to machine, right, we don't want to take and be flooding that with too much of a endless loop sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do. The test environments provided that parallels the real environment, so that you could develop at your own pace the application that you want, and when you're ready to release your application to the world, you move your test applications, move a few pointers to the actual URLs that the real users will see, and you can feel comfortable and confident that it's released live in a good state.
Mm-hmm. One thing in that process is, before the sites do go live, is there's a step called compliance that everybody has to go through. And it's our way of validating that you've met some minimum requirements that we want to ensure are in place before you do go live. It's not a testing process, but there's a few key scenarios that we check to ensure that authentication works properly and that the alerts are delivered correctly, for example.
So from that compliance standpoint, is it testing out the business capabilities of the system? Like, am I going to be spamming people or not, or is it just simply?
Not really. We would bring that up if we saw that if that's what the site was all about, but really our goal is to really check the functionality to make sure that the user's experience is going to be consistent and reliable. Also, there's some restrictions in Passport that probably would take much longer than this meeting here to discuss, but there's some things that you can't do with Passport that we frown on if you try to implement them. One of them is called silent sign-in, for example.
So from a privacy and security standpoint, sort of those
right.
sort of concerns.
Yeah, so we look for privacy issues, making sure that you have privacy policy in place, and ensuring that you reference the Passport privacy policy as within your own privacy policy. And then for newer sites or users that have IE6, for example, Internet Explorer 6, there's another requirement called privacy I forget what it stands for now, but P3P, essentially. And P3P is a way of breaking down a privacy policy of a site into very simple, concise statements that would be identical on any other site that you would go to. But each site has to define the compact policy that they're using, and then allow the user to see that through the privacy window and through the toolbar of Internet Explorer.
Okay.
I think we definitely want to present, the guidelines is designed to enable a level of comfort to the user to know that different kinds of alerts, there's a minimum bar of privacy protection built around it, so that you could signing up an alert is not a life-changing event as putting up your email address to the internet for them to send to you. We definitely want to make sure that there's proper instruction for users to how to opt out of an alert if they choose to do so. We want them to understand the privacy policies regarding alerts and the partner and Passport as well. So we want to have set that environment for the user so they can expect a consistency across different alerts partners.
Because I mean, essentially, with one of from a privacy standpoint, with Passport, when I go into a Passport-enabled site, at minimum, the only thing they're getting out of me is my PUID.
Right.
And so, and the business can't do anything with that PUID other than send me alerts by passing it through Passport. And so it's not like I'm giving them information that they can get at to me from other reasons, unless I choose to expose to them my email address and my name and stuff like that. Okay. So in closing, are there any final words you want to give to our audience about some architectural issues and where they might go for more information?
Yeah, I think since the launch of alerts a year and a half ago, we've made great strides in terms of building out tool sets for the developers for ease of implementation. We certainly have fleshed out a variety of material for the developer, such as the pack that Joe mentioned previously, that allow a developer a rich set of tools and documentations and resources available for them to implement alerts. And so I certainly encourage the developers out there to go to the websites and look at the information and the resources and the tools available and implement alerts that are applicable to your business.
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to add to that is this has been a learning experience over the last year and a half. So there are sites out there that aren't as good as we'd like them to be, and there are other sites that are really great. So as we learn and work with our partners on what's good and what's not so good, it's good to go out and check those sites out yourself and get a good feeling for what's working for some sites and what's not working for other sites, and take the best and use that as part of your basis for designing your own implementation.
I mean, good design is always the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us. And following this, we'll actually look at some code for how to actually implement .NET Alerts within a couple different environments. So after this short break, we'll be back with another programmer, and he'll show us some application demos of how code can be used for generating alerts within a couple different scenarios. So stay tuned. Welcome back. Now we're going to take and focus on some of the development aspects of implementing .NET Alerts and how Passport plays a role in that. Here to join me in speaking about that is P.O. Orvendal.
Hi.
Good for joining us.
Thanks.
And I understand you've actually been doing some development with .NET Alerts and understanding what the techniques and the issues are that an application or a company might need for actually using .NET Alerts within their system.
Yeah, so I've been working with developing the platform that content providers are using for implementing alerts. And for today, I've presented a sample that shows the aspects of implementing .NET Alerts from the partner's point of view.
Now, from a programming standpoint, do I have to be using a specific language or programming model or something like that? I mean, do I need to use the .NET framework? Can I not use the .NET framework? I have to use C#, Visual Basic, scripting, what?
You can do it whatever way you want. The current platform for .NET Alerts is based on SOAP. And that means that you can use whatever language you want as long as you can actually use SOAP. So Linux platform is fine enough, but Visual Studio.NET has quite a lot of tools and aids to help you. And the samples that we provide are in C# and VB.NET for.
So now when you say SOAP, do you mean web service model?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically we're implementing web services on their back end. So as long as you can call into web services using WSDL or whatever,
Yeah.
you can actually gain access to implementing alerts.
Exactly.
I want to take a look at the sample you've prepared for us.
Sure. And the sample actually has 2 parts in it. This is the sample application, and the idea of this is a school that is implementing alerts. And they really want to implement 2 things. The first thing is that they want to be able to send an alert to a parent when perhaps their children hasn't turned up to school for some reason that day. And the other thing is that the parents want to get an alert if the grade for that student becomes worse than, for example, C or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to show those 2 things and how to implement that using slightly different technologies.
Okay.
So the first part, which will use the .NET Alerts platform, is the first part of it, that is being able to send an alert to one particular parent. And the part that is in this application is that, for example, you can specify the name of the student, and then you can register that with a PUID, that is a passport ID. And this will typically be gotten from some web page or something like that using the Passport SDK.
So it's a real application. You wouldn't really be asking for a PUID at this point. You'd be using
Exactly.
Passport to sign in, and then through the sign-in process, the application would get access to that PUID.
Exactly.
And here you're using 1.2, so that's just a bogus
Yeah,
PUID.
that's just a bogus PUID. And what I will be doing here is that I will add an event handler for this button that will create the subscription part of the Alerts SDK, because as William told us before, there is a subscription part where you need to register this PUID with the alert system. So we know that this is a valid subscription and we should accept notifications for this particular PUID. And the second part that I will also show you is actually sending the alert. So you can select Matthew in this box and then you can enter a message and that will be delivered.
Mm-hmm.
So if we started looking at the event handler for the new student button, what I have to do in this code that it right now just updates my local database with the student registration and so on, much as you would have in your proprietary database. I will add some code that does the subscription management, as we call it. And the first thing I have to do is that I have to connect to that WSDL that we talked about before. And in Visual Studio.NET, I right-click on the web references in my solution and then select Add Web Reference. And then I specify the URL for the WSDL. And when you install the .NET Alerts SDK, that will be installed on your local machine. And I already had it in my clipboard. So you press Go. And when you found the URL, you just click Add Reference. And then I have to do the same thing for the Notify protocol. That is the protocol that's actually used to send the alerts to the system. So once you've done that, you will have some proxy classes that represent that protocol. And I grabbed some code from the SDK sample that we provide that actually populate that object model. So this is just copy and paste from the actual SDK samples. And the thing that I need to add in here is at one point the PUID. And I grab that from the text box in the Forms application.
So here you're grabbing that from the text box, but normally you'd be grabbing that off of the Passport sign-in object.
Exactly. And the second thing that I have to do, and this is also probably in the code behind on your web page, is they have to call the web services subscribe method. So once I'm done with that, I actually have a subscription created in the alerts database, and I have a subscription created in my own database using the SQL statements that you see down here below in the code. And the second thing that I talked about was that I have to also send that notification later on. So in the event handler for the send alert button, I once again populate an object model, and this is once again the code from the samples that we provide. And the 2 things that I need to add in this object model that is specific to this application is that I want to send the information to the PUID that I got before and stored somewhere in my database and persisted there. And the second thing is that I need to add the actual text that I want to deliver. And in this application, I grab that from the form again. And this is probably more typical of what you will do in case. This will probably not be in your web page, although it could be, because this is the notification that you have decided to send given the event that has happened for some reason. So if we compile this and have a look at it, I register Matthew, and once again this will probably happen on the web page, and I can then send a notification to Matthew's parents using that PUID. So perhaps I'll say Matthew is not in school, and then I click send alert, and that will send this information using the protocol, and the pop-up will show down here. So
now I noticed that you got an action associated with that, but you didn't type any URL here. Do you have an action? Actually, if you clicked on that message, something would happen?
Yeah. So some of the things that I specify inside this notify protocol are some URLs. So for example, if I click on that toast, that'll bring me to some page that perhaps is your school page, where you can find some more information about this particular topic. Mm-hmm. You can also specify an icon that you want to show in the toast and so on.
So now, basically, we're seeing an awful lot of code here on the screen that it took to actually implement that. Most of this is just setting some, base properties associated with these objects.
Yeah.
And there's only a couple of unique information bits: the PUID of the target, the URLs if you need to for the action, and the actual message associated you want to send to someone.
Exactly.
So it's fairly straightforward.
It is. And using the samples, it's pretty straightforward to just copy and paste the code and get it to work. Mm-hmm. Of course, there are some things that you need to add, such as error handling, especially when you start running into bigger volumes, but in general, it's very easy to implement this way. Mm-hmm. However, you still have to take care of the notification generation. You still have to decide upon the events that is happening in your application or in your real world, which notifications you actually want to send. So that is the thing that is left to you to do.
So I guess if this was like, let's say, a real school that was using this, they would need to kind of think through the process of, how do we know when a student is not in school, or when grades fall below a certain level, or other instances where we actually might want to take and alert the parents of what's going on, and just then building up the infrastructure that allowed that database to be maintained. And in a real school situation, you might want to have both parents attached to it. And so rather than sending a notification to one PUID, you actually want to send two notifications out, one to the mother, one to the father, or the guardians, or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a very good example of what we mean when we talk about notification generation compared with event generation or event handling. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The second sample will actually leverage another platform that we recommend for using more advanced scenarios, and that actually does the notification generation and also hides some of the implementation details about alerts from the developer, so they don't have to deal with the SOAP part and populating these objects.
And this other platform you're mentioning?
That is Microsoft SQL Server Notification Services.
And what's that?
That's a general platform for generating notifications and delivery information to different delivery channels based on a set of events. So, for example, stock events is one frequently used example to determine or to explain what SQLness, as we call it, is about. So for example, you may have a set of subscribers that want to subscribe to different stocks, and they want to know, for example, when a certain stock quote gets above a certain threshold. And you can register that in SQLness. You can define a data schema that represents your model, and then you can just shoot events to SQLness, such as Microsoft has today reached $29, something like that. And that'll trigger the notifications inside SQLness, and based on those subscriptions, it will figure out which devices to deliver that to, and MSN alerts can be one of those devices, and then simply do that delivery as well for you.
So the SQLNS then is a tool you can use for assisting you with .NET Alerts. Now, do you need to be using .NET Alerts to use SQLNS, or could you use it separate from?
You could use SQLNS separately from MSN Alerts as well. However, you reap some benefits since we handle the routing and so on in MSN Alerts. So we really think that SQLNS is a good way to leverage MSN Alerts, but it is a standalone product.
Mm-hmm. So basically all it's doing is tying into the standard trigger model that's built into SQL Server, and it's saying when this trigger happens, we have this notion of notification, and then it does the right thing. And one of those things it can do is utilizing .NET Alerts for sending those notifications out.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, why don't we take a look at that demo?
Sure. So the first thing that I have to do is, or I'd like to do, is to show you what I want to achieve in this sample. So apart from just being able to send an alert to the user as I select him and type some message and click on send alert. I have a little section of this UI where I can register a grade. So for example, I can say that Matthew is taking algorithms and complexity, and he got a grade F in that class. And when I click assign grade, that'll shoot an event to SQLNS saying that this thing has happened, and SQLNS will figure out what notifications we should deliver based on that fact, based on that event. So let me just stop this and start to have a look at an application definition file. So an application definition file, or ADF, that's the way that you set up SQLNS for each application that you have. And this is a very simple ADF that just creates these school events that I talked about. So first of all, you have to define what an event is. And I say that a school event, that contains two fields. It contains a student and a grade. And this is, in fact, a schema definition for the schema in SQL that SQLNS will generate for you. So an event contains a student and a grade. And I also have to define what a subscription is. So a subscription contains, for example, a student and a grade trigger value. That is the grade that I want to be notified of when the student gets worse than that in some particular class. So when I've defined those two things, I also need to define an event rule. And here I actually define a SQL statement that is used to, based on the event that has happened, try to determine which notifications to shoot from that. So in this case, I'm joining the events that I had and the subscriptions that I have stored somewhere in the database. So I join those on the student name and where the grade is greater than or equals to the grade trigger value for that particular subscription. So once I've set up that ADF file, and it also contains some more things that I need to specify, such as on the subscription, you can specify the device name, where MSN Alerts is one of those devices, but you can also have generate some files or HTML files or send emails or whatever like that. But so once I've set that up, I run some tools that is distributed with SQLNS, and that'll generate the SQLNS database and also generate a system service that is running, that is actually handling the event triggering and so on. So back to my application. There are a couple of things I need to change here as well. The first thing is in the event handler for the new student again. In this case, I also have to register the subscription with SQLNS. And in fact, if this is the only thing I want to do, then I can just skip the old SOAP stuff that we did before, because SQLNS is doing that under the hood for me.
So it's handling the building up of the object and sending it out to the web service.
Exactly. So SQLNS provides an object model, and in this object model I have to create a subscriber object, which contains the PUID. I add that to the SQLNS database. I create a subscriber device, and here's again that MS Alerts 6.0 is one of the devices in SQLNS. And that's the point where you can specify some other devices if you want that for the particular user. You specify the PUID, and you create the subscription as well, and this will contain the name of the student and the grade trigger value, and this corresponds to the schema that we define in the ADF file. So once I've done that and created the subscriber device, and the subscription, I'm done with the subscription management part of this. And the other thing I have to do is that as I assign that grade for a particular class, I need to add that event to SQLNS, or shoot that event to SQLNS. And I do that with a SQL statement where I set the student and I set the grade. And once I've done that, SQLNS will figure out whether to shoot a notification or not. So let's have a look at this application as well. I register Matthew again, and now I say that I want to subscribe to alerts if he gets worse than C. So when I click the button here, that will be registered in SQLNS, and under the hood, SQLNS will also call using SOAP to the alert service and create that subscription there as well. And then I set a grade. So in linear algebra, Matthew got a D. So I click assign grade.
And so now what's happening then is that the SQL server is capturing this information and preparing to send an alert out.
Yeah. And there you got the notification.
And now you also have the capability then, since we have actions associated here, that in your SQL notification you could have also assigned what happens when you click on that pop-up.
Yeah, exactly. So that is once again the configuration issue that you do. In fact, what is happening here is that SQLNS is applying an XSLT file or an XSLT style sheet to the actual information that I'm sending and creating that packet and delivering that to the alerts engine.
Mm-hmm.
So you could add your own URLs or customize the message that we send. See
Mm-hmm.
down here to whatever you want.
And some of the additional processing that a school, for example, might want to think about in this is that since we're handling the alerts in this fashion, maybe also recording the fact we send alerts out so the parent can go to another page on the school's website,
Yeah.
register themselves, and then see all the alerts that came through. So if they weren't at their computer at the time the alert came through, they don't miss any information. Because that's one thing important, that alert pop-ups are not, they're permanent. They're temporary, not permanent.
Yeah.
So once they're gone, you can't see them. So you need to think through how do you handle it. If the alert is something that's important enough, you want to give the user some other mechanism for keeping track of that.
That's an important issue, but you should also keep in mind that the user has the capability to set the routing on the alerts page to actually send the toast to your desktop and at the same time send an email or something like that. So that is actually configurable in the alerts engine as well.
So you can actually send it to both places simultaneously.
Yeah. So you don't have to care with whether the user is receiving the information using mail or anything else. You just send that notification and you're done.
Now, is this sample application, is this part of the SDK or is this something special that you wrote up?
This is not a part of SDK, but we have a couple of samples that show the various parts, and you will see all the components in different samples fully contained.
Mm-hmm. But basically, you just use code out of the SDK in order to build this up. So someone could just basically look at what this is right here, and duplicate that on their own if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Now, how long do you think it would take a developer for grasping some of the concept the SDK has and implementing this within their own enterprise?
That is a very good question, and that depends on your skill level, whether you have worked with SOAP or SQL before. But assuming that you worked with SQL and with SOAP, I'd say that it'd be a question of perhaps 1 or 2 weeks or something like that to put together an application like this, using either SQLNS or using the SDK as such. You should keep in mind that if you actually use the platform SDK, the .NET Alerts platform SDK yourself, then you have to do more things. You have to do the notification generation as well, where SQLNS leverages that and actually helps a lot with dealing with that and just thinking about your events that you want to deliver, and not so much about the specifics about generating those alerts and sending them using SOAP.
Because it's already built into SQL for handling the triggers and stuff like that. I mean, it's kind of it's a infrastructure platform that you're either having to implement yourself or relying on someone else that's actually done it like SQL has.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think are the primary resources that a programmer might want to go to and use in order to better understand the SQL? We've got the SDK samples. We've also mentioned the prescriptive architectural guidance, or the PEG documentation for it. What other locations are there for further information?
So the other thing you should have a look at is the Alerts SGK. So there you'll find information about how to implement the alerts part of this. You should also download and have a look at the SQLNS documentation that you can find to get a feel for what SQLNS can help you with. Especially if you're starting to build this from scratch, you should really have a look at that because it really helps get the development time down.
And if you're already using SQL for doing some of your database management, it should be fairly simple to just add the alerts capabilities in SQLNS to that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks, Pale.
Thank you.
If you have any final words or pointers you got to people?
No, I'm more or less done with that.
Okay.
Thanks.
And if you have any links to where people can get more information, just make sure you send those to me, and I'll take and include those in the bottom of the transcript so the audience can go to the bottom of the transcript and find out where to get some of this information, the SDK, the SGK, the SQLNS, and the PEGs, and all those other sorts of things like that.
I'll do that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, hopefully through this example, you saw how you can take and use the .NET Alerts to implement some of these capabilities in the applications you're building. Whether you're a school, like the example we saw here today is, or a business that wants to talk to your employees, or some commercial enterprise who actually wants to deal with your own customers. .NET Alerts, I think, is a way that you can take and integrate a good messaging structure to keep track of the people and let them know what's going on. Thanks for joining us.
Today we're with another of MS-DAN's very own. With me today is Chris Maurer. He is product designer with MS-DAN Online, the website.
Absolutely.
And actually I should emphasize that originally you came from, or still on, the Got.net site, which is now part of MS-DAN.
Yep, been with the Got.net site since the absolute beginning of the whole thing. When it was still just a silly little idea, I was around. We went through a couple different versions before anybody saw the real thing, and have gone through 3 site revisions since, and it's still going strong after 2 years.
So you're responsible for the Got.net logo?
Absolutely.
Or is it? I forget.
It's underneath now. There's been contention about whether it should be over or under, but who knows?
And so tell us about what you do now with the 2 new sites working together.
There's been a lot more stuff that I've been working on with the MS-DAN publishing team and working with the homepage graphics and the developer center graphics, the processes going along with those. And there's also been some new projects that we're working on, including the MS-DAN Labs, which there's a page in place. I can't say a whole lot about it right now, but we're trying to get really funky with the graphics on that one. Labs.microsoft.com, there's a teaser image at the moment.
So people can see some of your work there,
Mm-hmm.
besides Got.net, of course.
Well, of course. There's all sorts of stuff that's floating out there. The Terrarium game that was part of the .NET Framework release, that the UI and all of the insects in that game were something that I put together back when I was on the .NET Framework integration team.
Oh, cool. You did that all by yourself?
More
or
the
less?
graphics, yeah, mostly.
Neat.
It was one of those side projects that a bunch of people were working on to try to showcase the framework technologies, and I was the graphics guy available, and they said, well, what do you want to work on? I was like, well, okay, choose 3D Studio Max, and I'll learn that, and so it was a great experience, get trained on Microsoft's nickel.
I was going to say, what a great project. We'll probably lose you to Xbox someday.
Oh, I don't know about that. How much if I'd love it, but.
So you have such a great, bold style. What have you done other design work at Microsoft or previously to Microsoft?
Oh yeah, design's what I've been doing all along. That got out of college and worked for a local phone book directory for a couple of years, designing ads, and won an award there for like the Yellow Page Publishers Association or something, and. Then I got involved with Microsoft with the Image Composer and Picture It websites as a contractor, and then jumped over to the Data Access Components team working on their internal and external sites. And then we got kind of snatched up by the Project 42 team, which was the very early thinking for the .NET Framework.
Okay.
And during the midst of that, we did their internal site, trying to get everything all together in one place as they were trying to figure out what the framework was going to be. And then we realized that we needed to start building community around the framework, and that's kind of how Got.net came into existence.
Okay, so you have been there since day one.
Oh, absolutely.
So did you study design in school?
Oh, yeah, up at Western Washington University in Bellingham. Graphic design and illustration, Bachelor of Arts.
That's great. So do you do illustration or things similar on the side?
Oh, I do some. I design. I don't draw enough, unfortunately, but I did a posy or T-shirt for a band, the Posies, and it was all done in the style of Josie and the Pussycats, the caricatures of all the band members.
Oh, great! I'd love to see it.
Style.
I noticed you have on a wonderful Shag shirt.
Oh,
so
yes, of
he
course.
must be one of your favorite artists.
Oh, definitely. He's got such a nice, bold style, and just all the kind of stuff that I'm into personally, the whole cocktail tiki culture thing, that I'm, in fact, building my own tiki bar in my basement.
Oh, how great.
Slowly but surely.
That's great.
And his artwork will, of course, be in there prominently somehow.
Right. So what else do you like to do outside of work?
Oh dear, there's just so much. I produced some shows on Seattle Public Access. I did a couple years with the Movie Geek show, and with some friends, we did a short film called Das Clown's Clubhouse, and it went on to win the Media Masters competition at the Center for Design and Imaging Studies up in Burnaby, BC, and got my friend a scholarship to go to film school.
Wow.
So
It's
he owes me
incredible.
big time.
I guess. So, a movie geek, does that mean you're a huge movie fan? And
Well, of course. I mean, what else is there to be? There's, of course, we didn't limit ourselves to movies. It was whatever really struck our fancy. Cartoons, comic books, TV.
pop culture.
Absolutely.
So, what are some of your favorite all-time movies, and favorite favorite movies out right now?
Well, I know everybody who knows me is going to know that the first words that go out of my mouth are going to be Star Wars. And yeah, I'm a big Star Wars geek, and I'm designing a room in my house to be like my 10-year-old 70s Star Wars dream room, complete with like original vintage wallpaper, the whole 9 yards.
What you couldn't have when you were 10.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Friend of mine had it though, and so I've always been jealous. Now I'll beat him because he doesn't have it anymore.
Do you have any other all-time favorites?
Oh dear. Old Ferris Bueller's Day Off has always held a strong place in my heart. Any of the John Hughes films are always good. Boy.
What about some current movies out? Matrix? You must be a Matrix fan.
I'm a Matrix fan, but I was let down.
Oh.
I mean, the film was enjoyable, don't get me wrong, but I thought the tone kind of changed too much from the first one. I was a much bigger fan. But X-Men 2, now there was a good sequel.
Okay.
That was excellent. I was very pleased with that.
So what else do you like to do outside of work?
Oh, let's see. Been working on some crazy little Flash cartoons with some friends. Like one of my best friends lives next door and is also a designer, and so we've been trying to collaborate on some stuff. But most of my time outside of work is spent on my house. Trying to, with my wife, turn our house into the ultimate 50s, 60s, and 70s retro pad.
Oh, great.
We spent about a month painting our bathroom intricately with these patterns of circles and ovals in orange, blue, and green, going up the
Great.
walls, over the ceilings.
Is she a designer or artist as well?
She, not professionally, but she's quite artistic and creative, and so she and I are slowly turning our house into something people will look at and go, "Dear God, what are they thinking?"
Well, I personally want to be invited to the house warming. So
Okay, done.
I love that style. So where do you see yourself going, or what other type of careers do you want to look into at Microsoft or elsewhere as a designer?
Ooh, that's always the tough one. I'm kind of at that juncture of well, okay, I've kind of done what I've been able to do with the skills that I have, and it's time to start trying to expand. And some of the things that interest me are, of course, getting into being more art direction rather than coming up with or creating the actual pieces, but coming up with the concepts and vision and managing the people who will be doing the actual creation. And then there's also the thought of getting involved in something completely different. That I've dabbled with the 3D stuff with the terrarium. I've dabbled a bit with Flash animation, and it might be interesting to just kind of go off in another direction, though. That kind of puts me down the ladder a bit.
So what would you say is the best thing about your job right now?
Without a doubt, the amount of times that my coworkers tell me, "You have the best job. You really do. You get the coolest things to do."
The best office too.
Well, you got to bring home the cool stuff from home. You can't just work in a plain gray little box.
Yeah.
You got to have the couch, the lights.
Well, Chris, thanks for joining me today. It's been great.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of the .NET Show.
And stay tuned for the next episode where we'll talk about managed code.
And until then, we'll see you on the web.